pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Here.
Ooh, Collings.
Sorry.
Councilmember Stearns is absent. Mayor Pro Tem Stackfleth.
Here.
Mayor Klur.
Here. Okay, no special presentations, so we will open up to public comment. Anyone wish to speak to an item not on the agenda, please come on up.
The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and the hour of our death.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public wish to come up and speak? Anyone online? All right, we will close public comment. And moving on to council and staff comments. Todd, do you want to start us off?
Sure. So coming on September 11th will be EIFD resolution of intention, a staff report associated with it, the properties that we're considering in terms of a finance plan and all of other documentation that needs to be ready. If this body approves it, we've got two public hearings that we need to go through before we end up sending it to the county for their approval. So we're moving along as quickly as we can, and I have everything drafted for the next meeting. So there's that. With the flooding last week, we all know the circumstances around it, and have been working with the county, OES, this gentleman named Brian Shinoni, who is declared a state of emergency. He doesn't have a number from the state yet. We're waiting on a Siskiyou County OES emergency declaration number. That will come tomorrow, hopefully with the approval of the Board of Supervisors meeting, and that number is what we need to start charging for our time and materials and for other damages that happened around the city. So that's coming, and I just wanted to get it out to the public and this body so we can pass that information along and just start tallying losses and give reasonable estimates, and then we'll see what we can do about getting folks reimbursed.
And that reimbursement will come through the through your contact through OES?
Yeah, and we're assuming we're going to get the state emergency declaration. I think what I had heard from the OES supervisor is that part of why the state hasn't gotten us a number yet is they're waiting to hear from FEMA. And so that'll be coming, and because of the disaster declaration, a lot of the funding will be coming through there.
Great, thank you. Council, any updates? Our ad hoc committee has been meeting for the one-way streets and bike lanes and that kind of thing, and we are meeting with a few pertinent businesses downtown to get their input, so still very infancy stage, but meeting regularly, and we'll bring to council when we have something to report on that. All right, moving on. Oh, yeah, sure.
For Muriel. On the consent agenda, there's mention of the sales tax. Fully accrued. Is that the full accrual for the year? There'll be no additional monies. All right, so that's actually a little bit of a disappointing number. Whereas DOT was quite healthy increase, it seems like people are coming here, but they're not spending as much money as they used to. That's my impression, but more on that later.
Yeah, and that was through June 30. Yeah. All right, committee updates?
Nothing. The DIAC hasn't met since the last meeting.
Okay, and I think we have the library committee in a couple weeks.
We do.
All right, moving on to item 7, consent agenda. The city manager recommends approval of the following consent agenda items. All resolutions and ordinances on this agenda or added hereto shall be introduced or adopted as applicable by title only, and the full reading thereof is hereby waived. A, approval of minutes, August 14, 2023, regular meeting. B, approval of minutes, July 24, 2023, regular city council meeting, and July 27, 23, special city council meeting. C, approval of disbursements, accounts payable 8/17/23, total gross payroll and taxes for period ending 8/6/23, and D, monthly investment financial report.
I move to approve consent agenda items A through D by title only.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Passes 4-0. Okay, item 8, awarding cleanup consultant and administration of Brownfields Environmental Protection Agency, EPA cleanup grant. Muriel?
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. Before you is a resolution accepting the request for proposals for the administration of the new Brownfield grant for $149,970 to Siskiyou Economic Development Council. They have been managing these particular grants for some time, and the other one is to accept the bid from Geocon for $375,529, and they would be doing the cleanup effort on the next round of funding for this brownfield cleanup at the landing.
Thank you. Any questions?
To the chair.
Yes.
I don't know, Muriel or city manager, do we know when the Brownsfield cleanup project at the landing will actually be done?
We're hoping that with this last, it's a little over $700,000 of grant funding, that will be the end of it. But I always say with any type of removal of hazardous waste and testing where they've removed the waste, to just say that there's always a potential for additional findings and additional testing and all of those sorts of things. But I'm hopeful that this should be the last round for the cleanup. And it will also take care of the piles of waste that are covered and are down there that we were not able to remove the last time because we ran out of money. So that will be taken care of with this, as well as hopefully the last bit of cleanup. You're welcome.
I've actually got one more item that just occurred to me. Post EIFD discussion, I had a couple of long conversations with Bob Kendrick, with Kendrick Enterprises, the gentleman who would like to take the landing, and the idea of potentially taking on the landing, putting in the infrastructure, and being paid back over time with increment. I shared with him two things. I shared with him the low, medium, and high scenarios with the county and the city partnering, and what we're likely to see in terms of harvested increment over a 5-year period, which he's digesting now. The other piece of this is Cosmont, if you recall, put together a market analysis of the types of businesses up here that are likely to provide or act as the biggest draws. And one of them was light industrial. The other was workforce and market rate housing were the two highest. And so he finds that particularly interesting, and so he's going to digest those materials, and we're going to talk a little bit further about how we come up with a way, if we get through this process, okay, I told him it's going to be a minimum of a year of how we assemble development on the site for highest and best use for additional increment over the life of the district.
Any other questions? Okay, we will open up for public comment. Anyone wish to speak on this item? Anyone online? All right, closing public comment, back to council for discussion. Or motion?
Motion to approve resolution by the City Council of the City of Mount Shasta awarding the administration of an EPA brownfield cleanup grant to Siskiyou Economic Development in the amount of $149,970 and awarding the cleanup consultant to Geocon in the amount of $375,529 and authorizing the city manager to execute the agreement title only.
And that's CCR 23, okay. Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion passes 4-0. Agenda item number 9, CAL FIRE Volunteer Fire Assistance Grant Acceptance. Mr. Burns?
Is it on? Okay. Thank you, Mayor and Council. On August 7th, the city was notified of the award of the grant under the Cal Fire Volunteer Fire Assistance Program. The grant is a 50-50 match. The state gives us $12,249.75. The city matches the same amount, which will replace aging wildland fire protective equipment from shelters, web gear, pants, shirts, boots, helmets, shrouds, gloves, anything you can think of that we use on a wildland fire. The city's share will be taken from Measure A's funds, which allows the purchase of the equipment and continues to outfit the department in the highest quality gear on the market.
Thank you. Any questions? I'm assuming that this gear is in desperate need.
Our gear times out over 10 years.
Okay.
So after 10 years, we have to start replacing it no matter what. So this assists with replacing it on a readily availability and basis.
Okay, so the cost would be incurred with or without this?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, we'll open up for public comment. Anyone wish to speak on this item, please come on up. Anyone online? Okay, closing, back for discussion or motion.
All set? All right. Motion to approve resolution CCR-23-24, resolution of the City Council of the City of Mount Shasta approving the Department of Forestry and Fire Protection Agreement number 7 GF 23303 for services from the date of last signatory on page 1 of the agreement to June 30th, 2024, under the Volunteer Fire Capacity Program of the Cooperative Forestry Assistance Act of 1978.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes 4-0. Agenda item number 10, Small Disadvantaged Community State Revolving Grant Fund Application for Mount Shasta. This was presented by Ken Kellogg. Todd, are you presenting on his behalf? Okay.
As, an approval before, we have Raftelli's doing some grant writing for us. This is work they have done, we're about to submit for a clean water state revolving fund. Funds for planning and design work for 3 stormwater projects. They include Cold Creek storm drain fixes, Washington Drive and Mount Shasta Boulevard storm drain fixes, McLeod Avenue storm drain fixes. And for the, essentially we're asking for a total of $1.575 million for just the design work for this, and it's about ready to go in, and we've got a pretty good shot. It's a good grant application. And so we're just looking for the approval of that resolution so we can submit this, and there is no match.
Great. Any questions?
City Manager, the 3 projects total $10.5 million. Maybe I should ask this as a question. What is likely to happen if all 3 of these projects get grant funding for planning and then proceed to being executed? What would happen to the drain? What is likely to happen to the drainage portion of the citizens of Mount Shasta's bill? In other words, I'm assuming that's going to go up.
So that's a great question. So you all know that Raftelli's did a study and that we're going to have a stormwater assessment fee on not the November ballot, but the March ballot, that is going to have a rate that is based on the percentage of pervious surface for each parcel in the city, with a residential rate and a commercial rate. I don't have the figure here now. It's lower than what we originally thought, but this includes, this takes into account the cost of these 3 projects. If we're awarded for planning and design for this, if the state, if Clean Water State Revolving Fund pays for the planning and design of this project, clearly it's in the pipeline and they plan to, at some other cycle, pay for these improvements. So the cost per property for that stormwater assessment fee will be adjusted down because of if we win this if we win this grant.
Is this a one-time property assessment, or is this going to be a monthly assessment on the bill that includes garbage and water and sewer?
So right now we're it's for just drainage, and we've got a drainage fee for each property at $1 a year.
Right.
$1 a month.
I'm sorry, $1 a month. So not getting us very far, and so we need desperately to pass this measure so we have enough money coming in that we actually can start picking off projects as we go, and it will allow us to have more leverage when we're applying for grants. So.
Okay.
But
for grants.
it's not a one-time assessment. It's a new monthly fee, and it's comes back to the same adage of, since we've charged so little for so long, we don't think that for most families this is going to be cost prohibitive but it's more than it would have been if we were paying a reasonable rate up to now per month. And so it's, we're sort of paying for benign neglect.
Okay, thank you.
So the fee that will be voted on in March is a fee that assumes no grants for the construction, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Does it also include the maintenance, ongoing maintenance of the system?
It does.
Okay, great. I came up with 6, in conjunction with Juliana Lucchese, came up with 6 drainage projects, and I believe 3 of them are
Yep.
ones chosen. Why not Castle Creek? Why were these 3 chosen out of the 6? Were they because of particularly bad pipes and so forth?
Yeah, that's really it. It's what's most likely to fail. And, we have the other 3 in our sites, and we're looking for another grant source for that. And one of the things that I'm exploring, it seems like it would be just law enforcement related, but through Apex, Lexipol has a grant writing service that's extremely cut rate, and they do everything from transportation projects to drainage, you name it, across the board. I have a Zoom call this week with them to figure out what's on the table in terms of grant opportunities, especially for, stormwater drainage projects, see if we can knock some of these other ones off.
Any other questions? All right, we'll open up to public comment. Anyone wishing to speak on this agenda item, please come on up. Anyone online? Okay, we will bring it back to council for discussion and motion.
Motion to approve Resolution CCR-23-25, resolution of the City Council of the City of Mount Shasta, California, authorizing entering into a funding agreement with the State Water Resources Control Board and authorizing and designating the city manager or designee as the signatory for the Mount Shasta Storm Drainage Improvement Projects. Title only.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Agenda item number 11, first reading of ordinance CCO-23-26, I believe, amending Chapter 10.44 restricted parking, eliminating 2-hour parking in specific locations. Chief?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. On July 24th, council meeting, staff was directed to bring back to council amendments to the Mount Shasta Municipal Code sections 10.44080, removing 2 specified restricted parking areas that were determined to be outside the downtown neighborhood as defined in Mount Shasta Municipal Code 7.08.021. After bringing that back, I was notified of a 1969 ordinance that had established the business improvement area, which is what is used for the DEAC. Specifically references section 5.26 of the Mount Shasta Municipal Code when it comes to parking. When my recommendations were made, I had used the downtown neighborhood that the city had defined for the in the Mount Shasta 7.08. What I found is that although it is a business improvement area fund, it does not have any impact on Mount Shasta Municipal Code 10.44080. They're separate, and neither one of them are interlaced. So whether we have 2-hour parking or don't have any 2-hour parking doesn't have any impact on the business improvement area fee that is assessed to properties. So my recommendation from staff is although there is a business improvement area fund thing, if my intention was to keep the downtown parking, the 2-hour in the downtown neighborhood as designed. And so again, we'll have no impact on the fees that any businesses pay. There's other areas within the downtown area and the business improvement area that do not have 2-hour parking, including on Chestnut and Lake Street. My recommendation is we accept the changes and remove the 2-hour parking on the east side of Castle Street and the 2-hour parking located on Old McLeod at Ream.
So before we get into this, I think we need a procedural advice from Kathy. We had a council meeting where Councilman Stearns was absent, and we had requested that we put the item off until he was able to return and discuss that item. Apparently, you were allowed to vote, and if it's a split vote, and you decide you want to vote on the issue anyway, hear it anyway, despite the absence and the request to hear it. So we had that, and the ruling was what it was, which is to do away with the 2-hour parking. Now, we're here for the first and second reading. I just don't know if we can open this back up unless, and you tell me if I'm wrong, unless there's a vote from this body that says that we're willing to rehear this. Is that, do I have that right?
So ultimately, you're not actually rehearing what was heard originally. What was heard originally was whether or not council wanted an ordinance brought back. So this is the ordinance that's now being brought before you.
Okay.
So essentially, it's the same item, but at the same time, it's not the same item because you're doing the first reading of an ordinance tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so we're voting on the ordinance.
Okay, thank you.
Got it. Thank you for that. All right, any questions from council?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Years ago, the city council sought to impose 2-hour parking in areas where there were businesses to promote businesses, to have a turnover, and to support business development in Mount Shasta. How does removal of 2-hour parking from in front of these two businesses help promote their businesses?
I have no answer for how it promotes or doesn't promote them. As far as it, my direction was to take away the 2-hour parking as was there. It doesn't impact the number of parking spots there, and what I can't find where we've ever issued a citation in these two areas ever for 2-hour parking.
The city has issued,
We have, yes, we've issued in other areas. I could not find where we had issued in these two specific areas that are being removed.
well,
So that's the best I can do. So that's my best answer.
and I'm sorry I missed the last hearing. That was, I was prepared to inform staff and other council members that although there was that decision out of the Fifth Circuit, I think it was, or Sixth Circuit, that basically controls 5 states, the Ninth Circuit more recently ruled the opposite way, and it appears that the cities in California are continuing to enforce time-limited parking. There were a number of cities that were cited, San Diego, I think Berkeley or Bay Area. Reading apparently continues to enforce 2-hour parking. And I think that's consistent with the idea of helping to support businesses and generate the turnover of vehicles that are in front of businesses rather than having people park in front of businesses all day. From my perspective, well, I guess I'm getting into arguments, so I think I've asked my question.
So, Councilman Stearns, just to clarify, you're referring to the practice of chalking tires as opposed to having police officers sit out there to make sure nobody's moved in half an inch to try to beat the,
Ninth Circuit specifically said, chalking tires just fine, don't need to sit out there and watch. That is correct.
Any other questions? Okay, we will open up to public comment. Come on up.
Thank you. Nancy Jandro. At the July 24th meeting, there was a procedural irregularity resulting in possibly the vote that was taken based on misinformation, because that area is definitely in the downtown business district. It clearly is stated on the map, and there are businesses in that area, whether it's just the two of us. There's the Crave Restaurant where people park in front of our shop. There is Ashland on the corner where people park in that area too. So it's not just the two businesses that are there. If you remove the 2-hour parking at this time, I mean, if you should go on and enforce it at some time, the possibility of us ever getting that sign back is probably not very helpful at this time. So if you're not going to enforce it, that's your choice, but to take the sign away means that in the future, we would never have probably the opportunity to get that 2-hour parking sign back again. I just respectfully request that the council doesn't vote to permanently remove the 2-hour parking restrictions on the north side of Castle Street between Chestnut and the First Alley. If the police were to sit there and watch 2-hour parking, they might catch a lot of the people that just cruise through the parking or the stop sign at the corner of Chestnut and Castle Street without stopping. I mean, I have a visual of it all day long, and I'd say more than half of the people don't stop at that stop sign. So it might be a good thing to set up somebody there for a while and just let the citizens know that they do need to come to a stop sign there. Coincidentally, that stops the 2-hour parking post has been knocked down now for a second time in the last couple weeks, and it's been taken away. So I'd kind of like to know the status of what's going on with that sign, which would, of course, have something to do with the way that you vote this evening. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to come up and speak?
Hi, I'm Debbie Castro, and all I have to say is that what my neighbor said is correct. And I've also noticed that since that sign's been gone, there have been people with their trailers, their trucks, they're parking in backwards, they're parking in sideways, they're taking up all the spaces. And if you take all that away, what can we do about it to keep them from doing that? Because we have, trucks and everything else that come and park sideways. They take up 4 or 5 parking spaces, and no one else can park there. It's just, it's been a little bit crazy, and I've been there for 11 or 12 years, and only once did I see that sign knocked down, and it's gone. I went out there, it was smashed over one day, and the next thing I know, it's gone. So, I hope we can come to some good agreement here where everybody does well and our little businesses thrive. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to come up and speak?
Some here may recall their black and white TV watching a policeman say, quote, "Just the facts, ma'am," end quote. For the record, I own and live across the street from said signage. Please, on your time, devote words questioning the truth about the following facts. In City Council's first discussion about this signage, at the end of the meeting, it was Mr. Redmond's idea as a solution to simply remove the sign. I recall Mr. Stackcliffe seconding the idea, and direction went forward to the city manager and the police chief. A few weeks later, the sign was presumably run over to the point of it remaining at 45 degrees. I reported it to the PD. And the next day, it was pulled back to 90 degrees by a public works employee. Last Thursday evening, sometime before 9 p.m., it was professionally sawed off at its base. I reported it to the PD, telling them it then was laying down on the sidewalk. It was removed a few hours later. Months ago, across Chestnut on Castle, a no parking sign was stolen from the concrete base, metal post and all, in front of Ace Hardware. And to end with the obvious question, this ordinance is in its first reading. Shakespeare famously wrote, quote, "Something is rotten in the state of Denmark." I say, only in a mobster-run town.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak from the audience? Anyone online? All right, we will close public comment and bring it back to council discussion.
From my perspective, I do not approve going forward with this proposed ordinance. I don't see how it benefits the businesses or the community. And I don't think that we ought to be isolating some businesses, treating them differently than other downtown businesses within the business improvement district. There's a separate question. Again, I wasn't here for the last meeting, but when I was here for the first meeting, it was my understanding that the proposal was to eliminate 2-hour parking because our police department would not enforce that because of a conflict between the Sixth Circuit and the Ninth Circuit. The Sixth Circuit held it was a unlawful search unless you get a warrant to put chalk on tires, tag the tires. The Ninth Circuit basically said that's ridiculous. We've been doing it for 100 years. And the 9 or 11 Western states that follow the Ninth Circuit apparently are continuing to enforce the time limits and say chalking tires is perfectly illegal. You don't have to stand and watch a vehicle for 2 hours, whatever it happens to be. You don't have to have a video of the car or vehicle sitting there. So because of the maybe change of circumstances or clarification of the facts and legal circumstances, I think it's better to leave things status quo. Recognizing that limited time parking is to promote fluidity and a change of spaces, which helps the downtown businesses. And that's what we seek to do. I think all 5 of us vowed at the beginning of our terms and throughout our terms that we are supportive of businesses, and we want to help grow the downtown businesses. Passing this ordinance would not be consistent with that, in my opinion.
I would just like to remind that we are voting on the ordinance. The approval to remove the 2-hour parking has already been done, so this is for the ordinance.
No, that's what this first reading would do. The first reading we'd have a first reading and then a second reading, and that
I understand.
second reading would remove the 2-hour parking.
I understand, but the process to get this ordinance in front of us was determined by council that we want to move forward with the removal of the 2-hour parking.
I understand, and that was based upon a misunderstanding of facts and law.
Anyone else have any discussion?
So we have an opportunity to reconsider.
Just on the fluidity part of the businesses, we're not exactly talking about ACE here. We're talking about appointment-only businesses. So somebody from 8 to 10, 8 to 11, are they the violation? We got to go out and ticket them even though there's no appointments that day? Like I said, we're not talking about ACE or grocery stores that are open for a consistent amount of time that way. These are businesses that are by appointment only. So maybe, a whole day they aren't there? We're not exactly stopping fluidity when they're not open, but maybe a couple hours out of the day here and there by appointment only. So I disagree with the fluidity part of, the turnover for businesses. This isn't from 8 to 5, a set open amount of time that way. And in my opinion, we're only here having to discuss this because 2 neighbors don't like one other neighbor. We shouldn't even be having to have this discussion, but it was brought forward out of anger, over another anger, from another business neighbor, both angry at each other. Here we are. We have to settle it.
Hey, can I add something to this debate? And I appreciate Councilman Stern's point. If we're able to chalk tires, the thing that concerns me is this. When we were enforcing 2-hour parking and chalking, there was an immediate backlash from a large number of folks in the business district that didn't want that enforcement because it interfered with the ability of the owners of that business and their employees to park in front of their stores, whether that's right or whether that's wrong. That was the pushback that we got. So I think there are 2 concerns, is if we start enforcing this, we will be enforcing this in a way seemingly not in a fashion that is fair and consistent across the board, which to some may be a concern. The other is, if we are going to do wholesale enforcement, then just know that there will be manpower devoted to this that can't be devoted to some other things. But I'm open to solutions. I just wanted to add that into some other wrinkle to be discussed.
Chair?
Yeah.
All right, so 2 things. Chief, do you have any plans or intention of doing a citywide parking, 2-hour parking enforcement program? Do you have anything on the table now? Do you have any plans at all? Or what's your thought on that?
No,
It'd be citywide.
No plans.
Okay. All right, so I live on that block, in case people were wondering. And when this little controversy started, I tried to be scientific about it, but I'm a little too busy for that. So I just, with my partner, observe the parking impacts there. It's never sold out, very occasional. It's not never sold out, but very, very occasionally. maybe when there's the market, the Monday market for about 3 hours. I think it's been sold out a few times for that. This controversy started after the 4th of July. Our whole street was certainly sold out parking-wise in that time frame. But I haven't seen it sold out, and I pass it all the time, every day. So I'm not sure the availability of parking is so critical, on top of some of the other things that have been mentioned. Yeah, so I think there's parking available for most anyone who wants to park, pretty much every day, pretty much at any time.
Any other discussion?
In terms of enforcement of parking, past administrations have been approached and asked to enforce parking. We have heard in the past from the police department that there wasn't sufficient manpower. There was question of whether the city should hire someone to enforce parking, and perhaps the revenues from that would offset the additional costs of perhaps a part-time person or contract individual. I was previously on DEAC, Downtown Enhancement Advisory Committee, and for part of that time at least, I was chairman of that committee. And we kept hearing complaints that there wasn't the opportunity to park close to where somebody wanted to shop or obtain services. We made a point of asking businesses to have the owners and employees park away from the stores, away from the businesses, and a number of businesses, I think, imposed or introduced that policy on their own in order to create greater parking in front of their businesses. There's always going to be some people who say, and of course, when there hasn't been enforcement for a long time, and then there is enforcement, there's always going to be some people who are saying, oh, what are you doing giving me a parking ticket for? I hear Councilmember Redmond's thoughts that it's a dispute between neighboring businesses because we heard the owner or employees of Crave park in front of these businesses all day long. And to me, the solution is not to say, well, let's just let the Crave owner and Crave employees park in front of these businesses all day long and disadvantage these businesses when there are other opportunities, places to park. I too have seen these two businesses, and my understanding is they are busy pretty much all day long. Appointments are like half hour apart or something. So it's not just these businesses also, but the clientele. And I've noticed that a number of the clientele are elderly. They may not appreciate having to walk further and would hate to have these businesses lose revenue because we're taking away the limited parking. time. And if we're, we can always say, if we're going to take away limited parking, let's just take it away throughout the downtown business district. But I don't think there's 5 people on this council who would vote in favor of that, or even 3 people who would vote in favor of that. So I hope that other council members will vote tonight to uphold the general intent of supporting businesses and the reason that we created limited parking in the first place. We thought about having parking, paid parking and parking meters, but we chose to go with the limited parking in lieu of the parking meters. Thank you.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, does anyone want to make a motion?
Okay. Motion to approve ordinance CCO-23- Doesn't matter right now, okay. An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Mount Shasta amending section 10.44.080 of the Mount Shasta Municipal Code. Title only.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Opposed?
Motion passed 3-2. All right, moving on to agenda item number 12, discussion and possible action, consideration of an ordinance establishing a minimum floor price law, MFPL, to help decrease tobacco use. Todd?
Yeah, so during the July 24th meeting, we had a presentation that was made regarding a model ordinance prepared to assist California cities and counties interested in establishing or strengthening local tobacco retailer licensing programs and further regulating the tobacco retail environment with the aim of reducing underage tobacco use. And so before we go about and actually adopt one of these model ordinance, we decided to bring this to council to get a read on whether or not we want to move forward with this. So, there are a lot of things that these model ordinances do. Some of the highlights, it will impact pharmacies. There'll be no more licenses where pharmacies are selling tobacco. That's pretty common. That there'd be an age requirement for all transactions. I believe that should be happening now, but I don't know if it is. There'd be a fixed number of license based on the population density. And there would be a prohibition on the sale of flavored tobacco products. And there would be no ability to undercut the price floor on tobacco. Right now, tobacco companies will run specials even to give out free products or extremely reduced rates to get people using one particular product. And, some kids are bringing in these coupons and being sold. The final thing, well, there are a lot of things in here, but the other thing that I think was a particular note is that if we adopt this ordinance, we're required to conduct one underage sting a year at minimum. And I've talked to the chief, and that's something that we can do. But it has ramifications for businesses, and and obviously on the face of it, some particularly good benefits in terms of trying to limit the number of kids that start smoking. So,
Thank you. Any questions? Sure.
City Manager, I'm actually read all this.
yeah.
And certainly the vast majority of it, virtually exclusively, seems to make good sense.
Yeah.
There really are two things. One that was brought up in the verbiage that was presented to us about who's in charge of compliance. And the second thing, it relates to pricing. I mean, discounts and coupons, that's a bad idea. But there's just a part of me that, and maybe you can help me with this. This really isn't a question, it's more commentary for council, so
I know where you're going with this, and the ability for businesses to be out there and try to beat their competition by dropping the price of their products by a couple cents to compete.
and I'll save my comments, because it's not really a question, so I'll save it for the next section.
Okay.
Do we have any information? I missed the presentation or the meeting where this presentation was made, but do we have information as to what effect adoption of these ordinances in other communities have had on the community and the youth?
I think we have a member of the audience that can speak to some of this too.
That'd be great.
Come on up.
Thanks, Stephen.
Yeah, you're welcome. Todd made a lot of great points onto the pros. Sorry. I'm Steve Bryan with the Mount Shasta Community Resource Center and the Siskiyou Community Resource Collaborative. A couple of points, Tim, for every 10% increase in the price of cigarettes, adult smoking decreases 3 to 9%, and youth decreases 6 to 7%. Youth are particularly responsive to changes in tobacco prices, and evidence suggests that tobacco companies deliberately target youth with their price reduction plans. E-cigarettes are the most common used tobacco products among youth, with a use rate of over 15%. Tobacco companies target young adults ages 18 to 24 to increase their frequency of tobacco use and encourage their transition to habitual users. Systematic scientific reviews indicate that merchant compliance with youth tobacco sales laws reduce the rate of tobacco use among adolescents in the community. In a review of 41 California communities with strong tobacco retailer licensing ordinances, found after the ordinances were enacted, an average of 69% decrease in youth sales rates. So that's a few of the facts.
One question I had, clarifying question, was, and this might help to answer Councilmember Stearns' question too, is the undercutting of the ability to use the coupons does not affect the retailer except for the fact that they cannot accept those coupons. It does not affect their ability to sell. Is that correct?
Yeah, no, they would still have the ability to sell, but it would just create a floor. They couldn't go underneath that floor price.
Okay. And that would, yeah, within the city limits.
Yep, so the coupons wouldn't be able to be used at Mount Shasta.
Okay.
To the chair.
Yeah.
I have some questions. Virtually everything I've seen here looks, it's great, and that's good common sense responses to clearly an issue that needs to be addressed or has been being addressed for years but continues to be needed. But minimum floor pricing. Could we set it at $1,000 a pack?
I don't have an answer to that question. I'm sorry.
Well, it indicates the opportunity for government in America to put somebody out of business or dramatically hurt their business. As detrimental, admittedly detrimental as the product is. I worked at the Coca-Cola company. I know about detrimental products. And, you know, you can go, if we start going down the path of establishing pricing, coupons, great, fine, but how do you get around, is there any other place, any other product category where the government sets a minimum pricing?
I don't have the answer to that question either, but what I can say...
There may be.
This dairy product minimum pricing. That's a long story, but
Well, no, you're right. Thank you.
yeah, and
you're right.
it's based on the price of a pound of butter in Wisconsin
No,
or
no, you're
something,
right.
and everything
That's-
goes from there. And
Right.
that's why the price never goes down, apparently.
Councilmember Collins, I have some, the kind of layout in the ordinance itself, how to set the minimum. They say that the minimum price established in this section shall be adjusted annually by the department in proportion with the consumer price index using a system established by the department. So they've set it up that the prices are going to be determined by what the consumer price index is of a pack of cigarettes. So it kind of gives us a base.
And I missed the part, excuse me, Chief.
Yeah.
Who initially sets that minimum floor pricing?
I'm sorry, who sets the minimum prices for cigarettes or resale? The council can move if they want to go what the maximum of the, if I'm reading this correctly, what the consumer price index at the time of it is. So if the consumer price index is at $7 a pack of 20 or this much for a cigar, then council could set that. And it's designed,
So we're in charge of the minimum price?
yes, based off of the consumer price index. Let me read I'll read the note to you too. The indexing minimum prices to inflation is an efficient policy that does not require decision makers to amend the TRL annually to keep with prevailing prices. Jurisdictions in California have pegged the prices to the nearest U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics statistical area, and the language here is broad enough that the jurisdiction can take that approach or determine another effective way of the prices. So they give you a couple of examples of how to set that price that's fair and efficient.
Thank you.
Yeah, the idea isn't to put business owners out of business. The idea is to gradually bring up the floor price to discourage youth from buying cigarettes or adults. So to put it at $1,000 doesn't give a business owner time to figure out what else they're going to sell instead of cigarettes. We're trying to make this a phase-out approach. We're not saying that right now, today, you have to stop selling cigarettes. Otherwise, you would just make that the ordinance. Why make it $1,000 a pack when you can just outlaw cigarettes in the community? They're giving the business owners time to recoup those sales they're going to lose from cigarettes. So they need to find a better, healthier option where they can make money. But cigarettes are a thing of the past. We need to phase that out. Nicotine is a poisonous chemical that's harmful to our children. When people smoke cigarettes or throw their vaping products into the grass or around schools or in parks, little kids that come across that's harmful for them. So the hope is eventually we move away from tobacco products. And this is just another step in that phase.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
I would imagine that around town, there is a average price or a standard price for a pack of cigarettes. Is that correct?
Yes.
So if the council were to adopt an ordinance like this, we could simply base it upon whatever the average price is or the standard price is. And that would essentially be the floor that gets rid of these coupons and free giveaways. Is that the idea?
That's one of the ideas. Absolutely. And then every year you can bring it up a little bit and gradually remove those sales from these establishments, hopefully.
Yeah, I think when this was first brought to us, it was more about not letting the coupons attract youth.
Yep.
I think that, at least from my perspective, going in that direction where it's outlawed altogether, while a nice thought, we would never want to hinder our commerce to the point where everyone's now driving to Weed or Dunsmere to get their retail products. So anyway, that's more of a discussion piece.
Well, that's the hope eventually. It's not in 10 years we'll be outlawing cigarettes. It's like eventually we don't want people to drink alcohol. We don't want them to smoke cigarettes. So we're just trying to prevent kids from having access to it or wanting access to it so they don't become addicted. And this is just, it's been proven that this has led to less access for cigarettes to children and also less usage. So,
Through the chair. It sounds laudable. It goes back to my question of what has been the experience in other communities. You addressed that somewhat. The intended consequences are a reduction in youth smoking.
yep.
Are there any unintended consequences that have come up?
Not that I'm aware of, other than the business owner just needs to get into a different type of business,
I would
selling
imagine
different
that most
products.
businesses don't make I'm not a smoker, so I don't know, but I would imagine that cigarette sales would not be a major revenue source for most businesses. Is that true or not true?
No, I would disagree.
I think convenience stores
They rely on
do
it.
well on cigarette, cannabis-related products, like the papers and stuff like that, and alcohol. They do really well. Really well.
Yeah.
And we have 3 of those.
Do you have any examples of communities in our area that have done this?
No, I don't. I believe you would be the first in Siskiyou County. The same as your downtown ordinance for smoking that you adopted.
Okay. Any other questions?
And I'm sorry Amanda wasn't able to be here tonight. She was here last meeting, but
Does staff have any more information regarding other communities and their experiences?
I don't. I don't.
All right. Thank you very much.
you're welcome.
Are there any other, we can open up for public comment now. Anyone online wish to speak? Okay.
Caitlin Gannon might be trying to speak. Hold on, Caitlin, we're trying to unmute you.
They're way ahead of their time.
Okay, go ahead, Caitlin, I think you're on. Nope, hang on. I can hear her in here, but I can't.
Oh.
Yeah. Haven't had a public speaker in months.
Yeah, no kidding.
Okay, Caitlin, let's try it again.
You do?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we
Yes,
can hear you now, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. So my name is Caitlin Gannon. I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator for the Smoke Free High Country Project. So I'm actually filling in for Amanda Berryhill. She wished that she was going to try to make it here, but she got caught up. She's on a plane right now, so she apologizes. But she wanted me to reiterate some of the important facts from her presentation. First is that Siskiyou County has a tobacco use rate almost double of the state average. So Siskiyou's smoke rate is 22%, while California is 12%. California has been using tobacco retail licenses to combat the tobacco industry's influence. The most recent report from June of 2023 shows that there are 225 tobacco retail licenses in the state of California. Lastly, we also wanted to just share with you guys that in addition to education and technical assistance pre-policy adoption, our project also supports implementation after a policy is passed. We are funded to provide education to retailers, create educational materials, offer technical assistance for enforcement, and promote tobacco cessation resources.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any other public comment?
I have a question for Caitlin.
Okay.
Caitlin, you still there?
Yes, can you guys still hear me?
Yes.
I got the sense from some of the comments on council that there was a concern of abuse of power or possible future abuse of power if the city were in charge of setting the floor. What has been experienced in the cities or communities that have adopted this type of ordinance?
Similar to Steve, I don't have that information. I'm not too sure with those 225 tobacco retail licenses, what it's been like in those cities. I can definitely ask that question for Amanda and see if we can get that answer by tomorrow.
Have any other communities adopted this ordinance?
Once again, sorry, I apologize. That would be a question for Amanda that she would have.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any other public comments? No? Okay, we'll close public comment, back to discussion.
Jeff, did you want to finish your commentary on price controls?
Yes, I do.
Right there with you, go ahead.
At least speaking for myself, I'm old enough to have seen anti-smoking campaigns forever. And the method that generated the drop in sales relative to increased pricing was to increase the taxes on a package of cigarettes, which effectively brought the price up. And the subsequent decline in sales, at least from that angle of declining sales, there's a lot to unpack in this proposal. I would certainly coupons and discounts are that's kind of something that's easy to get behind, but putting us in charge of minimum floor pricing doesn't seem to be a good idea for me. I don't. These are words that don't usually come out of my mouth, but I'm not qualified. And the rest of the program, I think, has lots of merit. I would really just love to have some feedback from other communities, assuming there are some, because I'm getting the slight drift that
We're an experiment.
we're an experiment. And I'm just a little, I would like more information first. That's, I think I want to just kind of push this down the road a little bit to get more feedback from lots of folks.
Yeah, going off of that, when it was, I have school-age children, and I've seen the vaping become a thing as young as second grade, so being able to take an initiative where we can get rid of the coupons is very appealing to me. What isn't is well, they're going to have to figure out something else to sell. That does not sit well with me. And I agree with Councilmember Collins that we should not be in charge of pricing and take that much control. So pushing off until we get better data is probably a great idea.
I would prefer just to drop the whole idea of becoming a regulatory body for something that the state should regulate. They regulate alcohol, they regulate other things. And they have the mechanism, they have the whole ABC complex. And if they want to expand that to cover tobacco products, I say let them do that at state level and bring it down to where retailers get a license to sell tobacco products and follow those rules. Just like someone like John has to get a license to sell beer and wine, et cetera, and follow the rules. So that's the level I'd prefer this type of regulation to occur at, not the local level. I don't think we're qualified. I don't think it's advantageous. There's a lot of workarounds for users. Just simply go for a drive, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm not interested in this at all. So I'm negative across the board. I don't even want to see it again. Okay.
No, I hear you.
In case you're wondering, I haven't smoked ever in my life. I'm really happy that there's no indoor smoking anymore.
Right.
Would like to see the smoking rate go to 0. And it really disgusts me that so many smokers leave their crap all over the street and everywhere. So I'm feeling it, but I don't like to be in the regulation game where it's not appropriate.
As a former smoker, I definitely don't want to get into kids that way, but at the same time, I'm with you, Tessa. The e-cigarettes, the vaping is just out of control. Even just with my customers who are old enough to make the decision, it's disgusting. They're stupid. They piss me off every day that I work with all the cigarette butts and blatantly vaping at the bar, even though it's like, you're not supposed to do that inside. Hey, what is no cigarette? Okay, so we're still dealing with the level of stupidity, even getting started in that. And that was 2 packs a day, but I've been cold turkey for almost 23 years.
Good job.
At the end of September. So I dare anybody to compete with that. It's the only thing in my life I'll go toe-to-toe. You want to go toe-to-toe on quitting? I did that. But yeah, I don't care if we get rid of this. I'm not going to be the model city experiment on this.
I would like to suggest that we get some more information because we have unanswered questions. And I don't imagine that this is a all or nothing type of ordinance. There are some things that it sounds like a number of us find positive. The biggest concern I'm hearing is on the, floor pricing.
Right.
Floor pricing might not have to go into effect while prohibition against accepting coupons or giving away free packs or free samples could become part of an ordinance. So would others be willing to wait until Amanda or somebody else can give us some additional information?
No.
I'm going to move that we continue this matter.
Yeah, I think we have that as a motion.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you want to second that, if you were?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Opposed.
Okay, we will come back to this once more information has become available, and we'll get it scheduled for a later meeting. Thank you. Passes 3-2. All right.
So I did have a meeting.
Oh, okay.
So because of the way the calendar worked, we actually had the Collier Interpretive and Information Center had their August meeting before this meeting. Main positive is that the collections for fees for those advertising at the center came in, balance in the checking account went from a very meager $12,000 to $26,000 in 30 days, so that's a relief. Designs for new trifold brochures and so forth are moving forward, and the website's coming together. So these marketing type of projects are moving ahead, and people seem pretty optimistic that they'll all be concluded by the end of the month, I think, being September, that is. So there you have it. That's my report.
Thank you.
That Joint Powers Authority will continue on.
Wonderful. Any other outside meetings? All right, moving on to agenda item 14, future agenda items and meetings appearing on the agenda within 60 to 90 days. A, Emergency Shelter Ordinance 923.
Okay, hold on. What is that? What is that about?
So it's a California law that an emergency shelter ordinance be passed for every community that is as of 2007. And if we don't pass it, then our housing element won't be certified by HCD. It went before the Planning Commission, and and it needed to be adopted in its entirety, and we masticated that for 2 hours and eventually got it passed. So it's set to be brought before council the next meeting.
It's a must-do situation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Big time. We'll be here for it, Chuck.
B, discussion possible action McLeod Avenue parking prohibition to be determined. C, discussion possible action regarding the active transportation committee to be determined. D, approval of funds to complete a survey of Washington Avenue to be determined. And E, amendment of parklet ordinance to be determined.
Okay, so what's the amendment to parklet ordinance about? I don't remember that.
So
I believe that was getting rid of the COVID stipulation, was that it?
no, there was nothing in the ordinance that, addressed the existing, outdoor dining facilities. And, the way it was written on my end is, even if it's existing, it still needs to comply with things like, you need to be able to have water flowing to the sewers underneath, and you need to make sure that you're inspecting these things for, structural integrity, and the ability to remove snow, and what's the spacing on the sidewalk before you get to the parklet itself. So, my original intent was you look at the stuff that's existing now and see if it's compliant and make those folks make it compliant. But there was some discussion of like, well, maybe we grandfather those in, and that's really kind of a choice for council.
Yeah, that does need to be clarified. I kind of remember the bit about Washington Avenue. Was that regarding sidewalks and?
Yeah. Yep.
Any other details?
It's kind of escaped me for the moment. I'd have to look it back
It has
up.
a Mike Williams feel to it. Did he bring that up, or how did that get on there?
I think I asked that.
At the
I
end of the
suggested it be
meeting?
on because we were doing some survey elsewhere.
Yeah.
And I suggested that perhaps it would be cost efficient to also survey Washington, because
It needs a lot of
when we
work,
had talked
that's for
about
sure.
redoing Washington Boulevard in the past,
Wait a minute.
there were issues about.
So, what is the name of the street? Are we talking about Washington that goes
Wa-
from Everett
Wa-
Memorial to Old McLeod, right? Yeah,
Washington
okay.
Street, Washington
Washington
Boulevard.
Street Avenue, gotcha.
Yeah.
No, it needs
There
a
were-
lot of work.
There was discussion that the city would probably have to obtain easements from adjacent property owners. And it wasn't clear, I think, where.
No, sounds
It's-
like.
it's been around
sounds like
for
a good
20 years or
preliminary
more.
step to possibly repairing.
So
rebuilding
there
the
would
street.
be no cost savings because we've already done the surveying for McLeod, but there's no reason surveyors aren't that expensive. We can get a surveyor out there and, hey, what did the records show? What was the original right of way, and what is the right of way now? And maybe we don't need to purchase space because it should be wider than it is, which is kind of where we're looking at on McLeod. We can bring that back.
Okay.
No, I'm good with the idea. I just want a clarification, really. Okay.
Future agenda items over 90 days. F, discussion possible action, review of Chapter 13.95, extraction, exportation of groundwater from the city of Mount Shasta. Any other items to add? Yes, sir.
Chair, just one, based on a conversation we had a couple weeks ago with Todd from Shasta Inn. I'm forgetting his last name. Right now.
Anthus.
Thank you. And then talking with Brett about the possibility of snow removal to the center of the street on South Main Street down there. at their end of things, where they were talking about everything is pushed onto their sidewalks, exploring the idea of continuing the centerline trench, or pile up, I should say, all the way down past them.
Where is this? I'm sorry.
South Mount Shasta Boulevard, Casa Ramos, all that area, where we no longer put it to the center, it's pushed on the sidewalks, exploring the opposite.
I'll second that.
We might want to pull Ken Kellogg in on that one,
Yeah.
just because he knows it intimately, but yep, let's do it.
Any others? All right, we are adjourned.